Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Blair, or the Illuminati, and today we're going to be talking about the Mexican Mafia and some of their illegal activities and, believe it or not, their involvement with avocados. I know this initially sounds ridiculous, like how the olive oil mafia in Italy was a thing, but, if you've seen that video, then you'll kind of know how serious and deadly these mafias and these types of activities actually become. Essentially, after I did the olive oil mafia video, I heard in the comment section about the Mexican avocado mafia, the South African taxi mafia, which that's coming soon too, but I heard all of these mafias and their different types of activities and levels of involvement in things you would think the mafia would not be involved in. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at the avocado mafia in Mexico. Let's get into it. To start with, I'm going to briefly talk about where avocados come from and how their increase in popularity has actually affected the economy in Mexico. There are actually only a few places where avocados will grow year-round, and one of those places is Mexico. According to some sources, though California accounts for the majority of U.S. avocado production, the U.S. is a net importer of avocados from Mexico. Mexico supplied most of the avocados imported into the United States in 2017. In 2017, the United States imported $2.6 billion in fresh avocado and exported approximately $28,500 in fresh avocado. Total side note, every time I see fresh avocado, I think free shavacado and God, I hate myself. Anyway, back to this quote. Commercial shipments of avocados from approved orchards in Mexico can now be distributed to all 50 states. As border restrictions were relaxed, provisions were put in place to curtail Mexican production in an attempt to avoid saturation of the U.S. market. A rapid growth in demand soon prompted a dramatic increase in imports. CNN also states that only 10% of the country's demand for the fruit is met by domestically grown avocados, almost all of that coming from California. The point is, the US imports a lot of avocados, and I'm not super obsessed with avocados and anything, but they are a really good source of healthy fats and fiber, so I've got nothing against them either. Some articles say the most tangible explanation of the rise of avocados in popularity comes from the loosened import restrictions, which used to ban shipments of the fruit from Mexico. Since California can't grow avocados year-round or consistently put fresh ones on supermarket shelves outside of the West Coast anyway, this definitely played a factor in avocados not being readily available, so thereby not being quite as popular. In the late 90s, those restrictions were slowly lifted, and by 2007, Mexico had full access to the US's supermarkets. One 2018 article from the Medium also blames the Super Bowl and the popularity of guacamole for the rise in the demand of avocados, while Javelina explains that on Super Bowl Sunday, Americans ate 105 million pounds of avocados from guacamole. Avocados were once an obscure fruit, the alligator pear as some called it, but when the popularity of Latin American cuisine rose, the avocado rose along with it. Unfortunately, this popularity has had some unforeseen consequences. According to one 2017 article, the pickers and workers in this avocado chain are being abused. We've seen it with the agro-mafia too. While owners and higher-ups profit, those at the bottom deal with poor and even dangerous working conditions. The article states that one farm in the west of Mexico simply could not get its product on the market because of the commercialization is controlled by mafias, including local political organizations whose demands, if not met, led to crops rotting. It also explained that there is much more than enough being produced to meet local and international demand at reasonable prices. But until the producers have direct control over marketing their avocados to the system of poorly paid harvesters, high prices for local consumers and the extortion of producers will continue. Among other things, the commercial and marketing organizations insist on bringing in their own pickers, who are generally very poor people, usually indigenous from the highlands. Once one deducts the cost of transport, accommodation, etc. from their pay, they earn below the minimum wage and have no protection and security. One of the pickers sent to us was ordered at nightfall to cut so loose to electrical cables that he was electrocuted. There was no compensation for his family. In fact, the team boss harangued the other pickers about the stupidity of indigenous people like themselves and told us that if we interceded, we would be blacklisted. He was backed up by local political leaders and other local families terrified by what could happen if we persisted. So it seems like the larger a company is, the more they can get away with. I'm not saying this is true of every business out there, but from what I've covered on my channel, from Nestle to Huawei, when a company has an immense amount of power, it seems like the likelihood of that power being abused rises along with their profits. And now, with the avocado market as huge as it is, well, is it any wonder that these types of abuses are even happening? Another article from USA Today describes them as green gold and says that they are one of the reasons this avocado boom has become such a problem, and it's because of their value. Some growers have even taken up arms and say that their crop is worth fighting for. One town was even able to fight off the cartels, though many have not been so fortunate. We'll get to that later, though. The USA Today article quotes one of these farmers saying, "If it wasn't for avocados, I would have to leave to find work, maybe go to the United States or somewhere else." His orchard earns him far more than he would get from any other legal or even illegal crop. Both the pickers and growers are in danger here, simply because of how valuable the industry is. Hell, even the inspectors are in danger. Here's what the article says. While Mexican avocado growers have for years lived in fear of assaults and shakedowns, the situation went international in mid-August when the U.S. Department of Agriculture team of inspectors was directly threatened. While the agency didn't specify what happened, local authorities say a gang robbed the truck the inspectors were traveling in at gunpoint. Vulnerable workers being exploited and suffering in poor conditions is bad enough, but this makes me wonder how many of these situations we're not even aware of simply because it's being hidden from us, whether because people fear exposing them or because they've been swept under the rug. As willing as I am to dive into these topics, I'm not going out in the field to interview these people. I'm not gaining a firsthand account of what happened. But yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that with these subjects, chances are that we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. And unfortunately, this treatment is just about everywhere. A different Guardian article that detailed some problems in California suggests that there's little ethical options on the market. You might think, okay, I'll buy avocados from some other less problematic source then, but would an avocado from Chile, Peru, or the Dominican Republic automatically be more sustainable or equitably produced? The fact of the matter is that we know pitifully little about the environmental and working conditions of faceless people in faraway places who grow fruit for our tables, but I have seen enough of foreign fruit farms to suspect the worst. Fields of abysmally low-paid, often migrant workers who toil and live day in, day out in a trashed environment amid polluted water courses and pesticides, the latter decaying workers' fingernails from dripping saplings into chemicals. In most of the fruit-growing countries in Latin America, if you talk back to the management, you can expect a knock on your door for your shanty. As Banana Link, the group that raises awareness of conditions in the global food industry, has documented, Guatemala is the most dangerous. Any activist for fruit workers there courts summary dismissal or worse, kidnapping, torture, and murder. So let's get into Mexico's Avocado Mafia, because the avocado industry is known for brutal cartels and violence. This is especially prevalent in Mexico's state of Michoacán, the world's top producer of avocados. Due to its altitude, climate, and soil, this place has been called pure avocado heaven by one source, El País. Their February 2019 article states that not only were the avocado plantations expanded by 200%, but experts from Michoacán have grown fourfold to the point where it is though an entire city of London turned into one enormous avocado orchard. They say the avocado growing area suffered a spike in organized crime violence around 5 years ago, so around 2014. Attracted by the easy money, the dominating crime cartels at the time demanded a share of the pie through extortion and physical assault. They came into the mountain villages and invaded the fields, kicking the growers out of their own land. Organized civilian self-defense groups and the fall of the big drug lords reduced the pressure. The media attention moved to other hotspots in the country. But the violence never went away. In Uruapan, because it's more of a city, there were no self-defense groups. Earlier, at least we knew who they were. Now, we don't even know, adds the entrepreneur. In 2014, the man who was then the president of the Association of Avocado Producers and Packers of Michoacán, Sergio Guerrero Urbina, stepped down after being caught on video chatting with the leader of the Caballeros Templarios gang, together with other businessmen and local politicians. Gabriel Villaseñor, a senior president of the industry association, says that back at the time you would get called to a meeting under death threats. He says that the tension has died down, but notes there has been a rise in robberies, assault, and murder, which he blames on petty criminals. He himself hired bodyguards after his own cousin was murdered 2 years ago. As it turns out, the idea of the Mexican mafia turning from opium to avocados isn't far-fetched at all. The Financial Post said in January of 2020 that the rise in avocado crime is thus indirectly linked to America's opioid crisis, since these crime groups are, as you'd expect, involved with both green gold as well as drugs. The criminal activity around this green gold has become so cutthroat that it bears a striking similarity to conflict around actual gold, tungsten, thallium, tin, and other conflict metals, according to Christian Wanger, America's analyst at risk consultancy Verisk Maplecroft. Because the degree of enforcement in Mexico is so low, if they see an opportunity, the criminal groups, will start doing it. Avocados could become a conflict commodity, he said. Until recently, Mexico's organized crime group's main source of revenues from avocados centered around extortion, demands for protection money from farmers. But the sharp fall in the price of Mexican opium paste has forced them to diversify, according to analysts. Increasingly, they have started hijacking truckloads of fruit for export. What motivates them is profit margins. They have an impressive capacity to invest and go into new areas of activity, said Mr. Wagner. The rise in avocado crime is thus indirectly linked to America's opioid crisis. Americans' increased use of fentanyl, a synthetic opioid used for pain relief, pushed down the price for heroin, which in turn slashed the price of Mexican opium, according to Nathaniel Morris, a researcher of Mexican modern history at University College London and a co-author of a report of the U.S. fentanyl boom and the Mexican opium crisis. And I won't lie, when I started this video and I said I heard about the profit margins that attracted mafias to switch from opium to avocado, I figured I'd either have to remove that bit or that I'd prove myself wrong later, and I'd say that those margins were exaggerated. But going into these topics, I often don't really know a ton about them aside from things maybe I've read in the comments from you guys or just a couple articles I've seen floating around on the internet that get lodged in the back of my brain somehow. So when I dig deeper, only to realize that no, the mafia getting involved with avocados for the profit isn't an exaggeration, well, it's both a bit surprising and distressing, to be honest. Yet, as the Financial Post points out, if it weren't for the smallholder farms in the Michoacan area and the 30,000 small producers there, they would have an even worse problem with migration, crime, and poverty. Avocados provide much-needed income, absolutely, but the violence that comes along with these cartels is sombering. Another source states, in the decade leading up to 2015, the state of Michoacan endured an average of over 800 murders annually. By contrast, New York City, which has nearly double the population, had 290 homicides. Perhaps the most famous Mexican crime syndicate is the Zetas, a group of former Army commandos. In the 1990s, they became an enforcement arm of the Gulf Cartel before breaking out on their own. The Zetas have profited from the sex trade, protection rackets, and other forms of extortion, human trafficking, and most famously, drugs. They engaged in bribery, buying off top officials, but often found brutality to be more productive. The remains of their tortured victims have been a crucial part of the communications efforts of a gang that, for years, had the widest geographic reach in all of Mexico. One of the cartel's leaders, Nazario Moreno Gonzalez, has been immortalized as a volatile man. One of his nicknames was El Más Loco, which roughly translates to the craziest one. He faked his own death in 2010, only to later be killed in a shootout in 2014. But this Knights Templar organization we mentioned earlier continued, casting themselves as a self-defense movement, according to one source, while, and trigger warning here, because as Intelligentsia explains, new members were initiated or promoted in fraternity from hell ceremonies in which cartel members, dressed up as medieval knights, were required to chop up human corpses or, in some cases, eat parts of them. For all its extreme trappings, the Knights Templar was ultimately about generating revenue, which means it was deft enough to diversify into legitimate and semi-legitimate businesses in their criminal way. After forcing landowners to choose between death or torture and signing their land over to the syndicate, the Knights went into farming, harvesting limes and avocados. Their place in the ever-growing green gold trade allowed them to earn legal profits and provided an efficient way to launder money. They also slapped taxes on avocado packing and shipping companies, including some owned by Americans. In actions that reinforce their extortion threats, Knights are believed to be behind the torching of a pair of packing centers in Tancitaro. For their efforts, the Knights Templar and other cartels were, for a time, estimated to control 1 in every 10 avocado orchards in the state. The estimate value, $150 million. And yeah, that doesn't really sound like a self-defense movement to me. One man, Jose Manuel Mireles Valverde, was apparently a doctor until the drug cartels altered his path. He said the Knights had taken him hostage and ransomed him, and some of his relatives were murdered. He even carried a photo with him of his dead neighbors whose heads were mounted on a wall opposite his home like terror-inducing trophies. And holy fuck, I don't know if I want to go any further into this because, to be perfectly honest, I think you guys get the picture. The actions by the cartels and Knights are as brutal and horrific as anything you could really imagine. The OCCRP, Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, says that gangs, at least as of June 2019, stole roughly 48 tons of avocados daily. And further gangs, one called the CJNG, or the Cartel Jalisco New Generation, may be responsible for bodies found under a pedestrian bridge and at least 19 deaths in August. I feel like I have gone on long enough about the mafia itself here, and I'm pretty sure we can all understand the severity of the situation. It's gruesome to say the very least. Even though the focus of this video may be the mafia, there's plenty of other issues with the avocado market as well, including in California. One of these is illegal deforestation. Here's what The Guardian had to say about that. What seemed a crisis in the long term now presents as a clean eating emergency here and now, with urgent warnings that in Mexico, the unprecedented international appetite for this unique fruit is indirectly fueling illegal deforestation and environmental degradation. Those oblivious to such things in far-flung places will no doubt carry on regardless. But what are those who view the avocado as a basic food group supposed to do? The problem is created by the fact that it's now theoretically more profitable for Mexican farmers to grow avocados than most other crops. So much so that in Michoacan, the state that produces most of the country's avocados and arguably the world's avocado capital, growers are ignoring the law and thinning out mature pine forests to plant young avocado trees instead. But what's so bad about swapping one type of tree for another? Permanent forest doesn't need to be sprayed with fertilizers and pesticides. It takes care of itself and acts as a vast carbon sink. Avocado plantations, on the other hand, need repeated cycles of chemical inputs. They drink up irrigation water too, lots of it, putting pressure on local water reserves. By one estimate, it takes 272 liters just to grow about half a kilogram, 2 or 3 medium-sized avocados. The thirsty avocado isn't just testing water levels in Mexico either. In California, avocados now vie with almonds as the top water-guzzling crop. So again, it's one thing to have plantations for crops like these done responsibly, legally, and with the environment in mind. I'm not saying it's an easy task, but responsible forestry is at least possible, or at least certain organizations like SCS Global Services say they strive for it. It's when avocados are grown illegally and irresponsibly that things can go wrong so quickly. One journalist in Jalisco, a state in west central Mexico, says that illegal avocado production is the main environmental problem in South Jalisco, and that corn producers are unable to access enough water because avocado crops require so much. Many farmers from Michoacan have arrived because they see an opportunity. It is illegal to clear forest for avocados in Jalisco since 2009, but it is happening. Not all avocado producers are illegal, but at least 5 out of every 10 avocados in Jalisco are, if not illegal, then suspect. About 17,000 acres of deforestation for avocados occurs each year in Michoacan, and recent reports say that authorities are not capable and don't have the resources to stop the deforestation. Politicians are involved in farming, and drug cartels will even seize land to grow the crop and sell these blood avocados. The reporter says that if the U.S. continues to accept these imported avocados from Jalisco, the pressure on the forest will increase. So, does this mean we boycott avocados altogether? With the horrible work conditions, mafia involvement, and deforestation, it sure seems that way. Well, that may not even be the answer. An article from the New York Times written by Joan Grillo in March 2020 claims boycotting avocados won't hurt cartels. Obviously, this is one man's opinion here, but I think he has some fantastic points. He explains. After covering Mexico's drug violence since 2001, I think it is extremely misguided to advocate boycotting avocados to fight cartels. When industrious growers are shaken down by gangsters, it is crazy to hit them in their wallets again. We need to pressure Mexican security forces to stop extortion, not punish businesses. It's not a problem limited to one commodity, said Falco Ernst, senior analyst for Mexico at the International Crisis Group. A boycott of avocados would drag down thousands of hardworking families that have done nothing wrong. Some reports argue that the cartels themselves have taken over avocado farms. Indeed, organized criminal groups in Mexico launder money in a range of businesses in the United States, as illustrated in a blacklist compiled by the U.S. Treasury. They also invest their profits in the United States, as an infamous case of cartels hiding money in U.S. horse races shows. This doesn't mean a whole sector should be shunned because of it. Granted, there are concerning issues of deforestation and overuse of water in Mexico's avocado production. But this applies to many crops and requires the enforcement of environmental laws rather than attacking all the farmers, including those who follow the rules. So, boycotting avocados, at least from the sounds of it, would hurt the growers, the families, and farmers as opposed to the cartel. After all, the cartel has had their hands in drugs before avocados, and it's not like they couldn't do that again or get involved in some kind of different upcoming crop. Crime is always going to exist to some extent, so not eating avocados doesn't really hurt them. Hell, even though NPR reported that the Knights cartel leader was captured in 2015, it's not as if the bloody fights have even stopped. The only solution that I've seen mentioned is that the laws need changing. There is no quick fix for the situation. The reforms that are necessary to cleanse Mexico's institutions and enable them to do their job, including more effective oversight and by better training, paying, and protecting the people who work for them, will require years of gradual, painstaking effort from all sides. Meanwhile, precisely because conflict avocados are but a symptom of a larger dysfunction, a boycott would do more harm than good. Avocado production sustains thousands of hardworking, peaceful families in Mexico. No longer consuming what they produce would mean pulling the rug from under their feet, and most likely prompt criminal groups to prey on civilians even more aggressively to make up for lost income. Consumers can ask the companies they buy produce from not to remain silent, and investors can be a crucial voice, but this won't come easily. Addressing the role of U.S. guns in keeping deadly conflict in Mexico is another needed remedy. As Business Insider puts it, the guns Mexican organized crime uses to threaten and kill avocado producers are predominantly made in the U.S., flowing south from gun shops in the border area. Domestic pressure to curb the tide of guns into Mexico could go a long way in making Mexico a more peaceful place. Even though with MLMs or certain shady businesses on the channel, I try to tell my viewers to boycott and avoid them, but this doesn't seem like this is going to be the case for avocados. And this is simply because the problem goes way deeper than that, and here, that's most certainly the case. Just like with the agro mafia, the only option available to us as consumers is to make some noise. Higher-ups can most certainly see that and see that consumers want change. I know that seems almost naively optimistic, but I want to stress that in this case, a boycott would most likely hurt the wrong people. And hopefully in the future, we can see more cases of the cartel being resisted. In late 2013, Tancitaro's residents said they had enough. And like many towns throughout Michoacán, they took up arms, forming self-defense groups to drive the gangs out. Tancitaro went a step further and built a solid police force. Many on the force themselves have worked for their family avocado businesses. Many were long extorted by gangs. You just felt robbed, says Assistant Police Chief Jose Antonio Flores Quezada. You work and give your all to the land, and then someone comes and just takes it away. Flores' neighbors recommended him to the new force, which requires that only trusted locals can join. By early 2014, they had 80 residents trained and ready to go. Their salaries come in from local avocado growers and packers who wield much power and influence over the town. The other half comes from city coffers. Flores steps out of the patrol truck, one at 8 checkpoints sets up on the roads out of Tancitaro. A crew of 8 men has been on watch. They're hanging out in chairs in front of a brick and concrete barricade that looks like a medieval tower. Some play cards to stay awake through the last hours of their all-night shift. They are part of a civilian volunteer force working alongside the police to report any suspicious activity. Chief of Police Jose Hugo Sanchez Mendoza says they are vital to the town's safety, as well as the backing and support he gets from every resident. So hearing about the citizens of Tensitaro banding together like this gives me a small glimmer of hope, at least, and I will be hoping that more people from more towns will be able to do the same, to protect themselves against the mafia, band together, and protect their livelihoods as a community. But with all of that being said, that's where I'm going to end today's video, and I don't really know if I can say I hope you enjoyed it, but I do hope you learned something today. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, make sure that you subscribe as well for more content just like this. And if you want more content from me, including the sources I use to create this video, you'll find links for all of my sourcing, my social media, and all of my other channels and things that I'm involved with. Everything will be linked in the description box down below. So thank you all so much for making it to another video. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!